Marvel Rivals is having one of the most successful launches for a live service game in a long time. This game of course imitates the Overwatch formula, but with a lot of fresh things and with the beloved Marvel characters in it. But what if I told you that this game could also be a fighting game? We're gonna analyze that, and we're gonna talk about the mechanics, the roster, the visuals, everything related to the game, and how it would fit on a fighting game. If you enjoy fighting game related content, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing. It helps me a lot, and please stay until the end because we're gonna talk about a lot of different things related to this game and what would happen if it was a fighting game. The first thing we gotta talk about is of course the fact that this game is free. It's a live service game, and I don't know why we still don't have a big, IP having a free fighting game. Because at the end of the day, one of the biggest barriers for fighting games is skill, it's getting good at fighting games. But the barrier before getting good is paying for the game. And if you have to play a game that is hard and it requires a lot of effort, you probably would be more open to do that if you did not need to use $60 or $70 on the game. And this game does this very well. It's a very high quality game for, a free video game. It has great visuals, great gameplay, an amazing roster, a lot of beloved characters. And the same could be the case for fighting games, but we still don't have one. The closest one is of course 2XKO, the fighting game that's probably gonna release, in 2025 or 2026, which is built upon the League of Legends, world or universe, however you wanna call it. And there's a lot of hype surrounding that game, and I believe that it's going to be one of the most mainstream fighting games of all time. So the first check is that this game is free, and fighting games, future fighting games, should not be afraid to use this type of model when it comes to financial success. Free games have been the industry standard for a long time. They are always very successful if done right. They make companies earn a lot of money, and they also make players happy because the barrier of entry to the game is a lot lower, than paying big bucks just to play a game. So, do we need a fighting game that is live service? Of course we do. The next thing we gotta talk about is the roster. The roster of this game is great, like it has a lot of variety, 33 characters, so it's actually kind of a big number, but there's a lot of different play styles, different, aesthetics, everything you want on a roster for a fighting game. Marvel Rivals has it. You have, every type of fighter. You have rushdown characters, juggernaut characters, mix-up characters, zoners. So there is everything for you if you want to play a fighting game and take the characters that there are in this game. Of course you would have to adapt, their moveset and stuff like that, but it would be perfect to basically have almost the same roster as this game has for a fighting game. Then of course we gotta talk about the game format. This is a hero shooter, like Overwatch, and the developers did a great job. Like the gameplay for the game is super fun, super entertaining. We can only kind of criticize balance, but who cares about balance? Like, making games fun should be the priority. Balance is a secondary thing. At the end of the day, they are video games, not a sport. So, what happened if this was a fighting game? Like, would it be a 1v1, a 3v3 on teams like the King of Fighters? Would it be a tag team like Marvel vs. Capcom? Or should the game have every game mode? Personally, I think that the start, when you sort of release the game, it should prioritize having 1v1, because at the end of the day, that is the easiest barrier of entry for a fighting game, because you only have to learn one character. Now, you could also do a 3v3 and make, each person control one of the three characters, not one player controlling the three characters like on the classic, tag games like Marvel vs. Capcom. And that would probably make games very fun, super entertaining, but it probably would, be a little harder to decide to play the game. Like, it would be seen as a big barrier of entry, maybe. Like, it's kind of debatable what would happen. So personally, I would prioritize 1v1. Now, in my opinion, in the long term, if we get, a long service fighting game, it should ideally have 1v1, 3v3, like everything, because it's a live service fighting game. So getting new game modes in is part of the development cycle for a fighting game that is going to be alive for a lot of years. Then what will happen with the mechanics? This game of course has, a lot of movement, it has super abilities, it has some combos depending on which character you are gonna play. So I think that it also fits particularly well with a fighting game. You will need to tweak some things out and think if you want to make the game, 2D or 3D, or if you want to make it in an arena like this, because you can make a fighting game on an arena format like some sort of arena fighter. It is still technically a fighting game, but I'm not sure which version or which format would work best. 3D, 2D, it's kind of arguable. But there's a lot of options to make the game work, to make it interesting. I think that it could work very well depending on in which way you use the mechanics. Supers should stay, movement, like Spider-Man and Venom, web swinging and more stuff like that should also stay. It could work very well with a fighting game. And combos, of course, they should be a little more sophisticated because they are quite simple in this game, except for some characters like Spider-Man or Black Panther and also maybe the Winter Soldier. But aside from them, there's a lot of simple characters and that's fine, but on fighting games, a big thing are the combos. So it would be very fun to have more sophisticated and detailed, combo routes that are longer and stuff like that. But aside from that, why would it not work? It would be perfect to have a Marvel fighting game very similar to the mechanics that this game has. Taking all of this into account, there is a lot of characters, so which ones would be better on a fighting game context? Personally, I think that very, fast-paced and mix-up heavy characters are very good in fighting games that sort of prioritize offense, and that is kind of like what's been happening over the last years with fighting games. So with the roster that this game has, the top tier characters would probably be, Spider-Man, the Iron Fist, Black Panther, and maybe some other zoners that could fight them, fairly decently, like Iron Man, for example. But I think that a lot of characters would be good, because at the end of the day, nowadays, the power levels for characters in fighting games is very high, so most of them are viable, and that's what you need. Also, if you want to make a live service fighting game, like, you need for all the characters to be decent, because everyone wants to play a different character, and a lot of the times, people get into fighting games because of one character. And if that one character is weak and someone wants to play it, they're not gonna have the best time they could have. So it is better if everyone is strong, instead of having, a small pool of strong characters and a lot of weak ones. So let's play around that and let's try to make everyone super strong. So as you can see, with a lot of tweaks, at the end of the day, Marvel Rivals has everything to also be a fighting game. So I hope that we get games of this nature and with this amount of love when it comes to developing live service game for the fighting game genre in the future. Like, it needs it to be more successful, to become, at the end of the day, a little more famous over the masses. And I think that fighting game characters also have a very big potential to make people want to play a game just like Marvel characters. And of course, Marvel characters on a fighting games have always been, the peak combination for success. So hopefully in the future we can get a Marvel fighting game like Marvel vs. Capcom again. I'm gonna upload a video about Marvel vs. Capcom that's going to be fairly well edited and is going to tell the story of why Marvel has not been back and also why it should be back as a big fighting game franchise. So hopefully you can subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment about what you think, and wait for that Marvel vs. Capcom video because it's going to be fairly good. See you on the next one, guys, and have a great weekend.